Once upon a time, once upon a time, I had been working for a cross-functional product development project, and the team was geographically distributed, meaning the design team was from Germany, Berlin. The engineers and the software development team was from Karachi, Pakistan. The client himself and the rest of the stakeholders were from Dubai. I'd say the project was a bit complex because it had pretty vague requirements. The timelines were tight, and on top of that, every team in the project had different regions, so they had different culture and way of working. Well, being PMP and having all the other agile certifications, I thought I'd take care of this. I'm good. I'm pretty good at what I do. I know my work. I'll take care of this. I'll make sure that the project goes smooth, and things were fine until after 3 weeks, something went off. There was serious team collaboration issue. The designs were delayed, the developers were frustrated, and all of a sudden, client started talking about changing directions. Well, it was at that point of time when I realized something that all those certifications and trainings didn't teach me. And that is the art of emotional intelligence. So, as project managers, we're always taught on how to manage scope, manage timelines, manage risks, manage resources, maybe, you know, and this is all important, very important, and very good. But not once in any training was I ever taught on how to read between the lines, how to read the room, how to understand why the developer is avoiding communication, how to motivate a designer who's actually burned out, how to de-escalate an aggressive and passive email from a senior stakeholder. I mean, what saves the project? It's not just a good Gantt chart that saves the project. It's it's empathy, and most importantly, it's people management. So, project management has a lot to do with people management, right? Because it's people who deliver results, it's people who innovate, it's people who drop the ball, and it's people who break. So, if you cannot connect, if you cannot listen, if you cannot empathize with your team, and, and if you cannot lead with emotional intelligence, you just cannot save the project eventually. It might work once or twice, but in the longer run, the project is bound to collapse. As a leader or as a manager who is aware of the importance of emotional intelligence, there are certain practices which I've adopted with time and have proved to be really helpful. For instance, I always try to have a one on one weekly meeting with every team member. Again, it's not a meeting that is backed by any agenda, it's more of a casual meeting, maybe starting with, "How are you?" This sort of meetings, when you have one on one meeting with any of the team member, it helps you navigate uncertainty. Also, it helps you get most of your whys answered. For instance, why the performance of your developer has dropped significantly, or why your lead QA is failing to meet the KPIs that you have designed. And that is fine. Or sometimes it's more of their personal issues. Still, it's fine. The more information you have, the more knowledge you have, the more you're able to navigate through uncertainty. Also, sometimes you're able to get valuable feedback from the team members. It could be about the processes, the frameworks that are being followed or implemented, or even about the tools. But again, all of this information is valuable if you think that could be used proactively and more positive output can be drawn out of it. Secondly, be kind. Yes, be kind, be predictable, be approachable. Well, it's very common that team often imitates the behavior of the leader. When you're a person who is kind, who has a very polite tone, who's approachable, who's predictable, who's always available for the team, it not just fosters strong communication within the team, but it also creates an environment of trust. And trust me, when I say trust, it's very important because eventually, when you have trust within your team, it leads to better output and more productivity. It's okay to be assertive at times, of course, because you're the lead, right? You're accountable to get things done. You're the captain of the ship. So it's important to be assertive, but again, it has to be within professional boundaries. You need to be respectful. And you can only achieve that when you have the right emotional intelligence because it helps you to strike the right difference, a right balance between being assertive and being respectful. The third most common practice that I follow when it comes to people management is be flexible with your approach. Well, there's a common saying what works for one person does not work for the other. And that's true. Well, here, I don't mean that you don't need to have standards and protocols and operating procedures. Of course, you do. And you need to ensure that it applies to everyone in that team. But what I mean here is every individual is different. There are different personality types. And as a project manager, it's your responsibility to ensure that everybody works under the same roof and collaborate. But what and yes, there are different frameworks to do it, to identify those personalities and manage those personalities, which can be covered separately. Like it's like whole another topic. But what I want to emphasize here is that only when you're emotional intelligence, you rise above your ego. And instead of imposing things on people and expecting the same response and behavior from everyone, you understand that every individual is different. So you're always flexible with your approach and you try to manage them differently. And this can be achieved only when you're emotionally intelligent. My final words will be doesn't matter if you're project manager, if you're senior project manager, if you're a sparring project manager, always remember don't just assume that the team is fine just because they say so. Always remember people often hide burnouts behind the professionalism. So it's good to have certifications, it's good to have trainings, but most importantly, you have to deal with human beings. And for that, you need the most important skill that is people management. And when you're emotionally intelligent, it takes your people management skill to another level. That's it from my side. Thanks for watching.